Hi, and welcome to How to Burn Water. I'm Leslie. You might be a little bit confused that a blog about cooking is called How to Burn Water. Well, there is a story behind it, and I am going to share it with you in my next post. But I thought that today I would talk to you about what you can expect to see here. I grew up eating food from cans and boxes and restaurants, and I grew up in what I call a food heathen society, where food and cooking just weren't that important or that tasty. As a young woman, I learned how to make maybe a handful of dishes. Also, again, not that tasty. So one day I bought two copies of a cookbook. I bought one as a gift to give to a friend who was getting married, and I bought the other one for myself. I was actually pretty excited about this book because, based on the name, I really thought that I was going to learn how to cook and that I was going to learn to feed myself, and I was going to learn to feed myself more than four things. You know what? I was wrong. That book, I don't know what those authors were talking about. They used the names for techniques and ingredients that I had never heard of. I read that book cover to cover and I set it down and I cried. I was so disheartened. And I just put the book in the bookcase and I went back to making the same 4 or 5 tasteless meals that I already knew how to make. And then a few years later, I was cleaning the house and I decided to turn the TV on for background noise. And my choices that morning were kids programming or cooking shows on PBS. And I chose the cooking shows. I still didn't know how to cook though. And quite honestly, I really thought that what those chefs were doing was pretty amazing and magic. And then one day, one of the chefs made something and I thought, I bet I could do that. And you know what? I tried it and it worked. And I could do the magic, and I was so excited, and my confidence in cooking was born. And so I kept reading and learning and practicing and practicing and practicing. And sometimes my stuff turned out, and sometimes it didn't. But when I lost my corporate job, I decided to go to culinary school. It was the best thing I've ever done for myself, and it changed my whole world. It was a great idea. And now, for the last 11 years, I've been running my own personal chef business. I see a real disconnect between certain people in the food industry, some chefs, some restaurants, fancy magazines, and even some food movements, and the people over here, the millions of people who just want to feed themselves and their families. Food is universal, and it shouldn't be a big mystery. There shouldn't be a mystery of how to dice an onion or the difference between a saute and a pan fry. We should all feel like we're part of the club. For the last couple of years, I've been getting, I'd say, an average of at least 3 to 6 questions a week just from my personal network of family and friends about cooking. How do I do this? How do I do that? Do you have a good recipe for? I love helping. And like many people, my friends and family are all over the country. And I really kind of miss being able to spend time in the kitchen with some of my friends. And now that my nieces and nephews are getting older, I really miss being able to share my techniques with them or to share just basic cooking skills with them. I tend to get the same questions over and over and over again when I do get asked, so I decided it would be a good idea to put all of my answers in one place. And also to be able to put it out there for my nieces and nephews to see, because they are the inspiration for this blog and I dedicate it to them. Let's face it, despite what our moms would have us believe, we are not all prodigies and we don't master things immediately. Let me give you an example. So let's say that you learn to play a beautiful classical piece by Mozart on the piano. And it's beautiful and you do it wonderfully. But if you can't identify middle C on the keyboard, if you can't play any other songs, and if you can't read music, you're probably never going to master the piano. And that's okay because most of us don't need to master the piano to live. But it's a little difficult to live without food. Why should you choose How to Burn Water over, let's face it, the 50 bazillion other blogs that are out there? Well, the goal here is to help you learn new cooking skills or to enhance the skills that you already have. There are lots of little decisions that go into what we make that change the outcome of what we're making. We're going to be going over the over different types of techniques and the roles that ingredients play. We're also going to have plenty of recipes and lots of pretty pictures if that's really all you need from a blog. Cooking, like many other things we learn, takes practice, practice, practice. One of the biggest questions that I get asked, and it's probably the question that I'm asked the most, is, Leslie, I made this recipe and it didn't turn out. Well, most of the time it's one of three things why a recipe didn't turn out. And all of them are due to the fact that most of us don't understand, again, techniques or the roles of ingredients. The number one thing that tends to go wrong is people omit or try to substitute an ingredient. Especially in baking, this can be a little dicey if you don't know what you're doing. If you omit an ingredient, it can often change the chemistry of what you're making. And sometimes if you leave something out, again, particularly of something you're baking, if you leave something out, you can change that chemistry and ruin the recipe. The second thing that happens is people are just either using the wrong techniques or they didn't understand the techniques. Excuse me. And sometimes they say to me, well, you know what, it turned out and it was okay, but it wasn't what I expected, or it really didn't look like the picture. How often does that happen to all of us, right? And not just in cooking. The third thing that goes wrong, and I was told I probably shouldn't put it this way, but I'm kind of a blunt personality and I don't know any other way to say it, well, and keep it rated G. Sometimes what happens is with the availability of the 50 gazillion recipes that are out there on the web, and just the availability of different kinds of recipes, sometimes what happens is the recipe you have is crap. It's just a crap recipe. There are amazing recipes online. There's also some bad recipes online. And unless you can identify the good from the bad, it's going to be a little harder for you to have really good, consistent, and delicious food. It's time to relax, to forgive yourself when things don't turn out, to learn why they didn't turn out, and to fix it and try it again. We're going to be talking about tips and techniques and ingredients and cookware and recipes, and we'll have plenty of pictures and video how-tos, and we're even going to talk about grocery shopping, all to make you a more functional cook and maybe even put a little fun in your function. One last thing before we get started. This is a judgment-free zone. We're going to be doing all kinds of different things. And if something isn't for you, then move on and try something else. Whether you're vegan, vegetarian, paleo, gluten-free, or if you're just someone who eats whatever hits your plate, there's going to be a little bit of everything here. And all learners are welcome. And speaking of welcome, I'd like to welcome you once again to How to Burn Water. I hope in the coming months that I inspire you to learn some new things, to be inspired to try something new, and to feel proud of yourself for stepping out of your comfort zone. You can feel free to subscribe to our blog at howtoburnwater.com. You can also watch all of our videos on YouTube and subscribe to those as well. And you can like and follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Pinterest. Again, welcome to How to Burn Water. And don't forget, practice makes perfect. So keep on cooking.